We looked at this shelf, but I'm like, we barely looked at that Titanic conspiracy one. Did we look at this? Either my brain is rotting or I'm glitching in and out of different universes all the time. Like, I see Mandela effect type things all the time. I'm like, what's that about? Is that all psychological, or is reality even stranger than we know? I don't know. Sometimes I think, what are the odds that the properties of time and space would be completely stable? Nothing else is. But I don't really know what this book's about, but I saw it on the bargain cart at page 1 fairly recently, and I thought, I want to own this book. Why was the ship's helmsman packed off to South Africa? And why did the ship's log go down with the ship? Why did Captain Smith accelerate into the ice field, of which he had been warned many times? Why did he wait 25 minutes to start the pumps that could have saved the ship? The book reveals Smith's astonishing accident records and exposes the abysmal safety record of the White Star Line. What caused the hole near the bow? The iceberg cracked the plates along the ship's side, but this hole looks like the result of an explosion. Awesome, hilarious. Why is the position of the wreck irreconcilable with the Titanic's final SOS calls? Why was the Titanic replaced at the last minute by her sister ship, the already damaged Olympic, in a plot to recover the huge losses she ran up? It would have required little more than the switching of a few nameplates. So what's their case, I wonder? It wasn't even a ship. It was an interdimensional gathering place. Yeah. I still don't really remember looking at this Appalachian Trail guide. I feel like I would have gone off about this. I remember all the books around it. Hike the Appalachian Trail if there's any part of you that would ever consider it. Read Bill Bryson's book, A Walk in the Woods. That might get you excited for it, though it doesn't really at all capture the trail culture. That's really fun. It's a real part of the trail. Everyone has a fake name, an adopted name, and everyone is just who they are. You become this wild nomadic tribe on the move out in the wilderness, kind of. I mean, it's amazing. And you just walk the whole East Coast, basically. It's great. It goes from Georgia to Maine. When we did our hike, we started in Key West, Florida, and then we walked the Florida Trail, and then roads and smaller trails up to the start of the Appalachian Trail in Georgia. And then we met up with the Appalachian Trail, and we would have stayed on it too, except my then brother, now sister, then Jeff, now Jess, got like tendinitis, this horrible nerve damage thing that happens in your feet. Yikes. It was tendinitis and nerve damage. I mean, it was everything. It was like there were hospital visits, and we realized, we have to get a wheelchair. So we pushed my then brother in the wheelchair with his pack, I would say her pack, across Virginia. And Virginia is a very hilly state. It was an amazing experience. We all were like, wow, we did something really strange, pushing somebody in a wheelchair across all of Virginia. And it was during the summer, and it was hot and humid. I remember just sweat pouring into my eyes going up some of these hills, because I was also wearing my pack and pushing this chair with another person in it, and a pack on the back of it. Where was Prismo? Nowhere at all. Not helping me any. Same with Squirrel. Do I resent them a little for this? Yes. Do me the good favor of existing next time, guys, gals. So when that happened, though, that meant leaving the Appalachian Trail, and it made the hike totally its own thing. And I wrote a 7-part miniseries script about it that is a chapter in book 1 of my giant book I've been working on. But it's also just a standalone miniseries script. It's very unusual for someone to write a script for a whole season or series. Mike White did it with the show Enlightened, and I love that show. Also, I think no one tells artists what to do, But just that script was like a year of my life. Anyway, it started as a feature-length script, then it became a 2-part miniseries, then a 3-part miniseries, then a 5-part miniseries, then a 6-part miniseries, then a 7-part miniseries. You got to do the work justice, and you got to do the source material justice. If you have one of the greatest experiences of your life in which every month equals a year, and you're writing a giant book about your life, it's fine if it takes up 500 pages, because it's like a significant part of your life, and you lived large, and you explored the country in which much of your story takes place. And it sounds like I'm trying to justify my crazy maximalist book. Yes, I am. I like this book. When this book is done, people will be like, I totally know Mike now. They read it. I don't feel like I'll have any significant secrets. left after this book comes out. It's just pages and pages describing me sobbing, crying, alone. Children mocking me. No, just kidding. That's not how I am. But it's fun to joke about. Whatever. Anyway, so after we left the Appalachian Trail, we road walked and even went through giant cities and so on. We made that hike our own. It was incredible. We made so many more memories. I'll sometimes talk to long distance hikers, and the way they talk about the miles, I'm like, I don't feel like I had the same experience as you. Mine was more like Peter Jenkins, A Walk Across America. Ours was that kind of a thing. We were out in the world. Like in the cities, we camped on like the rooftop of a skyscraper one time in the Bronx. That was incredible. Got so hot so early in the morning, the blacktop tar, we ran yelping down the stairs. Thank goodness that door was unlocked. We were staying in New York in this like suite with this guy who we had met in Florida. When we met him in Florida, he was like this white rapper DJ dude who raps as the Vitamin P. But when we caught up to where he was living in New York, when we walked through there, because we had this website and it was a real like community around this hike. It was cool. The comments section, our email list. And the hike itself had this voicemail where we'd always check in. That was a real interesting like social media element of it for us. We had a website that we kept our journals on and maintained and posted video clips and stuff. None of it was like auto-uploaded. We sent it all to a web developer. That's just where the web was at that time. It was back when you might go to a cafe and plug your laptop in with an Ethernet cable. On that hike, we had this device that would like fax sound your emails through a payphone. It was crazy. Called the TM20 from Sony, I think. I was like, I don't understand technology. This is black magic. What is going on here? How is this phone emailing my email as tones into the phone? I don't get this. Science, you're a wizard to me. Once in a while, you'll get like a grasp of a scientific principle, you know? I feel like I had a layperson's understanding of the Big Bang for a while there. Then Prismo started doing all these weird psychic mind experiments on me, took my knowledge away, left me the fool you see before you now. Or whose voice you hear. I had great dreams for myself, and these cats ruined them all with their weird psychic experiments. Stay out of my head, kitties. But we did end up hiking some of the International Appalachian Trail, which was the original plan, but not all of it. We also road walked some in Canada. The last part was all trail, though, and it ends at this lighthouse overlooking these gray granite cliffs. It's just incredible in the ocean. The Cliffs de Forillon of Gaspé. That's it right there. Oh, this is from Backpacker Magazine. I think that's a great magazine, personally. You know, I love backpacking culture. When I have some money and stuff, like when I'm an actual teacher, and hopefully when my book hits, and that ship comes in, and the Saints go marching down, and I finally get the opportunity to just sell out. No, not that. But to like to live financially comfortably, you know? I follow some booktube channels where people say YouTubing is their income, and I'm like, okay. Maybe it's possible, but is it possible with the zero amount of effort I'm willing to put into editing? Like, I want to be able to do this channel, like super low budget, kind of deconstructing what a YouTube channel is, kind of, you know, just really somebody talking about books. I did steal this idea from Cartoonist Kayfabe, but that channel had the advantage of being about a more visual medium, comics, you know. But I still think books are beautiful objects, interesting objects. And there's all kinds, and they're kind of cool to see. Maybe this channel is like the hum of bees. It's just looking through a bookstore. There's some guy talking really loud, but he doesn't sound totally ignorant. He's definitely crazy, though. Does he have a Bluetooth in? I can't tell. Nope. What's up, squirrel? I like the idea of the central voice of this channel being just a voice, like this Emersonian eye. That was like Emerson's ideal, to just be an observer. But of course, there's no such thing as a true lack of subjectivity. All cinema verite is filmed by somebody, and the clips are edited and arranged. The Appalachian Trail is such a cool experience. I mean, who cares though? Look at Squirrel. This should just be a channel about her. And we should write some hymns or something worshiping her. And, you know, singing her praise and glory. Of course, we must worship the void as well, in the form of this cat. Once her paws patted the floors of the temples of Diana. Probably. Sometimes I find it hilarious that Prismo got outside during an indoor time when we knew she was in heat and somehow got impregnated by 3 different baby daddies. She was out like 2 hours. She's all, don't judge me. Because all her kittens look totally different. Wait till you meet Sweet Pea, aka Mrs. P, aka Mrs. President, when Anodyne brings her for a short stay. Anyway, the Appalachian Trail takes about 6 months to hike. It's from Georgia to Maine. There are these, and you stay at these shelters every few miles. I mean, you know, there are shelters every few miles. Most people hike about 15 miles a day, I think. But it varies. Most people hike it north, some go south. Having hiked even a portion of it on our hike, I'm like, I get it. The Appalachian Trail is awesome. It's a potentially quintessential American experience available to anyone who wants it. You have to work, but it's like a boot camp in nature, and you're going up and down hills, and like you have blisters, and you're sore, and get rained on and soaked, and have misadventures. I really enjoyed. We walked the Tennessee-North Carolina border through like this total rainy season on the Appalachian Trail, and it never stopped raining, and the fog never quit. It was like a mystic dream. It's incredible. Totally miserable at times, of course. Nothing like wringing out your socks and then putting them back on. But you meet hilarious people, other gonzo, freak, awesome folk who out there for all different kinds of reasons, and it's a blast. You'll meet people you'll never forget. It's good times all around. There's also an annual festival, and all the hikers drop what they're doing and hitchhike and or get there, however, to Damascus, Virginia, where they have the Trail Days Festival with this giant talent show and just everyone hanging out and having contests and games and stuff. It's fun. My friends and I hitchhiked there and rode a train, and we got busted riding the train. Dang it. And we had a great time. And everyone kept trying to give me a trail name. You're Corn Dog 2. I'm not going to be Corn Dog 2. Trash Man, because your pack got stolen and you had a bag of trash for a while. It was just a trash bag, it wasn't a bag of trash. Yeah, that one's okay, I guess. But then I got stuck with the mayor, because I was shaking everybody's hands one time, being social. Everyone hated that trail name except me for a little while. None of the other hikers would really use it, except derisively. This one guy, John, he was always trying to pin me with ultra mundane trail names like Big Mike. He'd chant Big Mike. It was so funny. Really was. You know, it was one of the times of my life for sure. I'm like Napoleon Dynamite's uncle with that hike. I do look back at it sometimes and I'm like, that was so cool. Instead, I have to hang out with Squirrel. I guess that's cool. And Prisma. Oh, the backyard is so trashy. Gee golly, gee whiz. I mean, the landlord should be the ones to clean that up. However, I mean, that's embarrassing. The other upstairs tenants here and myself have made it into a project. Believe it or not, we spent a full day cleaning trash out of that yard. We filled every trash receptacle. We need to do that again and keep doing it. Will we find a body? I don't see where that would be. A gun, maybe? Sure. Something that we'll have to go get injections for? Maybe. I definitely did see part of a dead pigeon down there. Hopefully not the one that hit the window of this place. Left a perfect imprint that one time. It's gone now. That's dangerous to do. I can't be seen filming out of my apartment. Here's a totally believable scenario. Someone sees me filming out of the apartment. They just file that information away. Then, like, they get busted for something else. They're like, this guy did it. Next thing I know, I have a Molotov cocktail in my house. This is Albuquerque. You gotta consider these things a little bit. And then someone online will comment, lol, Albuquerque's so safe. What are you joking about? Let me guess, you live in a gated community. I'm guessing you don't drive central much. 14 minutes in, and we're starting the shelf I wanted to start. So these are nonfiction books. If you've ever been like, you know what? I'd like to hear somebody talk about some nonfiction books that are out there. They can be all kinds. Probably not science books because those are off in their own section. Probably not New Mexico nonfiction because they have their own section. Ditto Lake Powell and Canyon. Okay, like I'm like contractually obliged as a person to want to read this. This looks fascinating. It's totally about where I live. The Indian frontier, American West, of the American West, 1846 to 1890. What a topic. So the railroad comes in the 1870s and 80s, right? Robert Utley, in a big transcontinental way. That makes this a very interesting time. Often tragic. Always in need of understanding. And that's a time that we forget about. And, I feel like some sort of obligation is wanting to be a complete person of knowing history a little bit, knowing what's going on, especially on a place level. Where are we? Right where I was, this apartment was a little village in the late 1700s. If you look at a lot of maps, even today, it says La Cañada right here. And maybe I've just doxed myself. But that was a little village, La Cañada de Guantaboso, in the 1700s, right around here. Classic. Gulch. Ravine, gulch. In the broken terrain of New Mexico, many places use the Spanish word cañada to describe a gulch made by erosion or by volcanic activity. I think I need to look up Guantabo. On April 5th, 1748, a petition designated La Cañada de Guantaboso as W, west of Sandia Mountains, Twitchell. Toboso Indians were akin to Apaches of Texas. Tobo is a Spanish word in the Philippines meaning cup made from coconut shell. The name is listed by Elsie Clues Parsons as one used by members of a ceremonial society at Jemez, some 30 miles northwest of Zurich. Pueblo of Jemez. So, I don't know. And this was also in the Western Interior Seaway right here. Terrace Canyon was a channel of that mosasaur swam where I am sitting right now. Prismo, who is some sort of interdimensional time being, was there too. Yeah, it started out as a book channel, but then it was just this guy kind of going insane and talking to his cats. Time Cube. He talked a lot about Time Cube. Anyway, huge, tragic, amazing topic. I've said it a million times, but if I ever had that Game of Thrones money, I would want to write a series that, I'm talking the budget of the show. I would want to write a series about the whole history of the people of North America and South America too. You have to tell both stories. And Eurasia a bit, it's all connected. And really, it would end up probably being some big human story. The first episode should be about larger migrations, Tell the biggest story you could, You wouldn't want it to all be post-European contact, though that's one scope. But it's just been done so many times. And there's so many interesting chapters of pre-European North American history. It's just harder to know it all. It's known through archaeology and tribal lore. It's both an engrossing, splendidly told narrative and a major new interpretation of the last Indian American frontier. Wow. This is a tour de force. There are only a handful of manuscripts that I read with greater pleasure. I don't know who Martin Ridge is, but he sounds erudite and informed. UNM Press. Yeah, there are 2 editors now in my writing group from UNM Press. My friends Marie and Brenton. And I've known Marie a long time. We had classes together, maybe was that undergrad or the very beginning of grad? We had this avant-garde poetry class together. It was amazing. It blew my mind. It made me love postmodern poetry forever. But the class was often unpleasant because for childcare reasons, I literally could not make the newly adjusted time that the teacher changed the time to. It had been one time when I signed up for it and I could manage that time and then make it to daycare on time where my kid was just for the length of that class. We didn't usually do daycare, but UNM had some. Something like that. And, but so she was always mad at me. The teacher was always mad at me for being late. And I was like, I literally cannot, you changed the time on the class. That's how packed a young parent's schedule can be, This looks really cool. I've had people tell me this is great. The Imperial Cruise. Secret History of Empire and War. It's about Theodore Roosevelt and his advisors. A fateful cruise where they designed the course of empire. Hampton cites a triumph. James Bradley has once again given us the human face of a war we thought we knew, and in doing so has forced us not only to rethink our history, but far more important, to refeel it. Oh, Iris Chang liked it. She's literally one of the best historians ever. R.I.P. Gone too soon. A tragic epic of 2 empires, she said. Wow. It's crazy to be alive. How strange it is to be anything at all is one of my favorite lyrics ever from Neutral Milk Hotel. Definitely the sort of thing I would like get a tattoo of if I did tattoos. I think multiple people in my family have that lyric tattooed. My daughter might. My sister might. I don't know. Prisma, do you have tattoos? I meant to read this when I was in Connecticut 2 years ago, but I was very distracted because I was there for sad reasons. I was there for the funeral of a piece of cardboard that Squirrel murdered. And we are talking a vicious, repeated stabbing. No, my daughter had gone to New York after our house got shot up in June of 2022 to stay with friends and get away from this psycho that tried to kill her. Be careful who you date, folks. Yikes. Anyway. Long story, but there was some medication she should have been taking, and that was lost in a bag that was stolen or lost. And she ended up in a somewhat manic state walking around, and she was just out too late, and some busybodies in Connecticut that totally inconvenienced so many people by doing this couldn't believe that she was just sitting in a cafe waiting for her ride, which she was. But they called the police, and the police came and they brought an ambulance, and the ambulance handled her like totally roughly, and they cut all her jewelry out. She had like 30 piercings. Anodyne is so punk. Y'all don't even know. She's also like a top model in Albuquerque and has been in something like 60 magazines or something. It's crazy. She's a total chameleon, and every tattoo she gets ticks her model off, her agent off. She is like wealthier than me by far. I'm like, that's amazing. I don't know, probably. She's just like a responsible saver and a smart person. Anyway, so she disappeared in New York, and the last anyone we heard of her was some somewhat depressed sounding social media posts, and the last anyone had seen of her was talked about in like a Facebook or Instagram comment that she had gone off with some skater guys into an alley. It was really scary. I remember pacing these bleachers out at Volcano Vista High School on the far side, west side of town. My son was playing a soccer game there. My friend Ty called me on the phone, and I just like knew in this horrible way that Anodyne was probably dead, and it was like the worst feeling. A real hollowness, you know? Sometimes you just dive to the very black heart of existence and you like lick the rock at the bottom beneath the subterranean windstorm, you know? And that's how I felt. Anyway. But so I just flew out there. Like we kind of did an in extended family GoFundMe, and people really chipped in, and it was awesome. So I flew out and ended up in Stamford, Connecticut, which is so weird because when I walked through Stamford, Connecticut on the Hike for Hope 2001, back in 2001 on that hike I talked about, that was the worst town of the whole hike. It rained nonstop and everyone was horrible and threw trash at us as we walked through town and drove real close to us and splashed us with puddles and stuff. And when we went to the newspaper there, architecturally is a very cool town. When we went to the newspaper there, the editor said, our readers aren't interested in charity. They wouldn't do a story on the charity aspects of it because that was kind of part of what we were doing, was raising awareness for Oxfam America. Anyway, Stamford had been horrible, but we've been stuck there for a while for some reason, waiting for a delivery. We had packages sent to us at general delivery along the hike, and so we were there waiting for like a late one. But while I was there, I wrote my name in wet cement at one point, and I found it again when I was back. It was crazy. I wanted to read this when I was there, but when I landed in New York, when I got to Grand Central Station, I found out that Anodyne had been located and that she was in Stamford, Connecticut, in the same hospital where editor Max Perkins died. He was editor of F. Scott Fitzgerald, Hemingway, Woolf. It's an interesting hospital. It's half old red brick buildings and mostly, actually, this giant, glassy, cloud-reflecting skyscraper with a little marsh next to it. But because my kid had lied and made up a fake name, first name Anathema, hilarious, and said that she was 18, I had no parental rights to visit her. And so I just like lived in Stamford, Connecticut in motels for like 3 weeks. Walked around that town, and I felt like kind of it had brought me back to give me like a better appreciation of it, because I saw that it was actually like a really diverse community and had some really good Mexican restaurants. And even a Guatemalan restaurant I went to, and a really good pizza place. And there were all these like pop-up parties and pop-up clubs that just happened all over, and it was really cool. It's like that sort of like party mentality that you hear about in the early hip-hop days was still like alive and well, but with club music from here and there in the world. But during the days I would hang out with Anodyne and watch movies with her and talk, and mostly talk, and sometimes write and make art and talk writing and art. And it was like a really cool bonding time with my kid, actually. Had a lot of those, and a few of them have been focused around trauma. It's great. But Anodyne's really squared away now. That kid, like, she grew herself up fast. And, you know, figuring out your own mental health is a thing everyone's got to do, you know. Wasn't this guy just talking about his cats doing things to him with psychic powers? Yeah, so I brought this book with me to Connecticut. Did I open it? Probably not. Maybe once. But I was reading a book about Montaigne. This one, Father of the Essay, and it was good. See, I ain't lying. That is the cutest thing I've ever seen. You're just sitting on those books, you're reading them? That's awesome. I love that. Cats are the ultimate psychogeographies. They're appreciating new landscapes constantly. On a real micro level, you know? That looks comfortable, yes. Mike, not to be rude, but you've talked for 26 minutes and you've barely talked about any books or anything. What is this video? Well, for one thing, it's a meeting of the Kitty Human Book Club. But also, you know, Greg Palast. He's kind of like Matt Taibbi, but with less of a focus on the humor. He's kind of like Matt Taibbi meets Hunter S. Thompson. But he's totally his own thing, too. Best democracy money can buy. And he's really outspoken. He's like real Gen X. He's like got that perspective. But I appreciate it. Squirrel just knocked over so many books. Well, I was just praising you for being a psychogeographer, and now you're being destructive. Have I read this? Yeah, I think I did once. But political books, I don't remember them as well as I remember some things. It's all facts about the economy. Like, cool, I read that. Anyway, I feel like this book would confirm my worldview, not challenge it. But it might give me some more ammo, you know, things to think about briefly before forgetting again. What are you doing over there? You shouldn't be scratching around among the books unless you're going to read them. This is disrespectful. We're going to have like a special court session and try Baby Squirrel for crimes against the books. I do that once in a while. Law is the law. Okay, this is like considered the canonical literary take on Lewis and Clark, aside from their journals. And that's a pretty big aside because the journals really are the thing. It's great to read their journals. They're so interesting. Not only are they both fairly lively writers, Clark has a real poetic soul. Amazing that he had a slave and didn't even free the slave in his will despite promising to. But I actually really love Clark's journal entries. They're beautiful. And he definitely had the spirit of a nature writer in him. And Lewis was kind of a philosopher. On his birthday, he said that he wanted to live heretofore for mankind as I have previously lived for myself. He was just kind of a dude. Chill bro, you know? I mean, they paved the way for genocide, basically. However, they themselves were tried to be gracious and helpful. I mean, the men were very close with the native populations that they met. They were often treated for venereal disease. Some of the men, like Charbonneau, one of his direct descendants that I work with regularly, isn't that funny? And I work with the direct descendant of Carrie Nation, the pro-prohibition lady, anti-drinking lady. What's going on here? You're just trashing the place. You made a tunnel. Now you two are fighting. Are you making a new empire out of the books? I did not see this coming for this channel. You heard it here, folks. There's some tension in the house. This just in. Squirrel and Prismo, mother and daughter, fighting. What is happening? Are we safe? Are we too close? Prismo is such a play actor. I love it. She'll really believe it. Sometimes her tail will puff up, and I know she's playing a little play with the squirrel. It's very cute. I mean, look at what's going on here. What? Someone give us to Dusty Dubs. Y'all seen that very funny YouTube channel? That guy has a pretty good batting average. Very funny. Takes these clips of animals that are already charming and adds really funny, creative voices to them. I like art and entertainment, you know? And it's funny what people make. Humans are wild. Yeah, I mean, is Stephen E. Ambrose a little bit of a guy carrying water for empire, you know? Perpetuating the myth of America a little bit. But he's an optimist. And he believes in, he's like an old school, like, I don't know, like an old school Democrat, like early 1900s or something. I mean, he's not as far left as like Howard Zinn, but he's like a biographer of presidents. And anyway, I appreciate his syntheses of historic information like this one on Lewis and Clark, which does have a lot of really interesting insights. Like when Sacagawea gets to vote in this or that group decision, he's like, this is the first time a woman had voted in America since European contact. And it's a rip-roaring narrative with high stakes and crazy adventures. And it's so cool to hear what this country was like before centuries of European contact, you know? I just can't help loving Lewis and Clark, though. Like, their journals really were like, you know, they're up there with the best historic primary documents, you know, the most essential in my mind, at least for somebody living in North America. Of course, I've never read the complete ones. It's a huge set. I've seen it in the library before. Wanted it. Yeah, Lewis and Clark is a subject I'm interested in. They kind of drove my desire to see and experience the world when I was younger. Funny heroes to have. Colonist heroes. I don't know that I would call them heroes. Historic figures in whom I take an interest in, who revealed to me a world. Clark really does disappoint me with the slave owning. Come on, poor York. And I don't know. It's crazy reading the Odyssey where it's like, you gotta just know that they're okay with slavery in the story. What? And he's gonna kill a bunch of his slaves at the end because Squirrel really opened up a new area. Maybe I can move some books around so they can have that. And that's like inviting them to help shape the place, and that's kind of cool. Oh, this story interests me so much. This is crazy. Okay, I hope I still have this book, Lighthouse Mysteries of the North Atlantic. I do. But I read this book when I was walking along the coast of the North Atlantic, and I loved it. I couldn't believe what a good book it was. So much like, this is a good book. Is it of local interest to people that live locally? Sure, but I kind of think it's actually a good book, and anyone could read it anywhere. Great setting. Great lore, great history. But one of the most striking chapters in this was about this 1938 hurricane that just destroyed the East Coast, particularly New England. And having read that a couple times in that book, walked through the legacy of its damage, I don't recall specifics. I was happy to track this book down, Sudden Sea, Great Hurricane of 1938. What does it say? At the ragtag end of summer, a strange ochre light came off the ocean, and an eerie siren filled the air. Those who heard this wordless chanty would never forget it, as with it came a wave that would wash their world away. Yeah, this is awesome. This might have even been made into a movie, I thought. Maybe that was a dream. Hurricane was a foreign word in New England then. Interesting. I watched these amazing videos about New England forests, and this guy could like read all the pillows and troughs of the land, and he had connected it all to specific historic events. It was amazing. I watched a bunch of those when I was writing the script about walking up the East Coast, because we stayed with this forest expert who had written a book that was kind of famous called Beyond the Beauty Strip, about how companies clear cut just on the other side of a beauty strip of trees for the tourist. It offers reasonable solutions about humans and industry and nature coexisting. Like, for one thing, never use bad poisons. I really like what he said about that. Stop it with that. You're destroying the land you're using. That's bad land use. And, you know, don't be rapacious. But there are so many cinematic images from this storm that I first got from this book. Like, for instance, giant ocean liners being blown prow carried by waves prow first into the sides of trains that were swept off of tracks. I mean, epic. It's like Sharknado or something. It's just crazy over the top, you know? But, so it's crazy. I've been working on this giant 2-volume maximalist work lately, you know? The last 15 years, and every chapter has a different form. Like one chapter is a comic book, one chapter is a play, one chapter is a joke book, one chapter is a book of scripture, one chapter is a zine. You know, it's just endless variety. One chapter is a literal description of home movies. One chapter is a script for a mini series. One chapter is my childhood journals rewritten. It's called Childhood and Revised and Updated. Anyway, I guess I've always wanted to use that kind of an eclectic form before. I think ever since reading Emerson's essays in high school and thinking you could tell a story with an essay collection. Just like, imagine a neighborhood where everybody had their own essay. You would learn so much about the neighborhood and there'd be some overarching large story, but all the individual essays would be interesting and profound and show these characters also. Still think that's a good idea. But then I adapted that to be about a fictional novel that I spent that whole hike across the country filling notebooks full of ideas about. And I was just going to call it Another Book. I don't love that title, but that's kind of where my humor was at the time, I guess. And the book was about a book. So in particular, I'm trying to remember, it was about a guy who wrote a handbook, and that was going to be one of the chapters, was like a dummies book on how to start a cult. Another chapter was going to be a collection of National Enquirer articles about, or, you know, like front pages about this neighborhood, because the cult handbook made it so that everybody could start a cult really easy, and saw how easy it was. And this one neighborhood in particular, near where the guy who wrote the handbook was, had sprung into having like 5 or 6 of them. And I really had some cool settings in that thing. Like this one guy's office was in a basement underneath a house that was built over a cemetery, because they couldn't destroy the cemetery because it was historic. It was old, from like the 1800s, and the basement had a low ceiling and low hanging pipes. And so the character in the book was always walking around, pacing around, hitting his head on these low hanging pipes in this basement amongst the graves. And that's totally based on where we founded that hike across the country, that setting. Anyway, I did write some sections of that book. I wrote a novella by a cult member about this guy who couldn't die because he didn't believe in an afterlife. Or so it seemed. No, it was pretty fanciful. And he had all these, like, it was like a little church. He built a lighthouse out in the desert. It's funny to think about that novel. I almost never do. But anyway, the whole reason I mentioned it is I wrote a novella, I think it was a novella, yeah, called The Book of Henry. No connection to the movie that later came out with that title. But Henry was always having his homes destroyed by floods throughout his whole life. And one of them was in 1938 in this hurricane. It just seemed like wherever he moved, there would be a flood. He was the guy who would later discover that he could refuse to die by not believing in whatever was happening next. And then, let's see what happened. Probably will sound ridiculous when I describe it, but that's a lot of art, you know. All these worshipers were gathering him because he had built this lighthouse out in the desert, convinced that another flood would come and he'd be ready for it. Oh yeah, now I remember. He also thought that bison hadn't become extremely endangered. Most of them had become a very tiny species of bison, and they lived around, and he was always seeing them and nobody else was. And then toward the end of the book, everybody sees them. He was right. That would be some really fast evolution, but I think I explained it in the text through punctuated equilibrium, which is like really fast bursts of evolutionary change. Also maybe a miracle of St. Henry. I don't know. But this was one of the events that affected him. I wrote that in there, and so I did a ton of research into it. I think I did read this book when I wrote that novella. I also researched this flood that happened in Hatch, New Mexico in the 1920s, when the whole adobe town just melted when the Rio Grande rose. Was one of the other ones. I think there was a third one. I mean, when I write fiction, it's fun to do research and incorporate reality. You don't have to do that with everything. But there's got to be something you could read that would illuminate your fiction, that would, like, even if it's philosophical or like about structure or literary ideas. I went on an Orwell binge. I read all his collected nonfiction. I think I read like 3 books like this. And it was great. Did I always agree with him? No. Some of his stuff about like now dated topics, sure, but it's still interesting. This book was a 5-star banger. Everyone was out on the dance floor for this book. Game recognized game, you know. When you spend so much of your life trying to be like a good essayist, whatever that means. And honestly, who cares? Essay literally means attempt. So how are you going to mess up an attempt? You attempted wrong. Very liberating, that thought. I guess if you're like a hateful idiot that makes the world worse with your writing, that would be one thing. But I like old Orwell. You know, famous for his fiction, of course, 1984, Brave New World. Wait, no. 1984. Not Brave New World, which is by Aldous Huxley. Animal Farm. 1984. Bowie. Oh, check that out. 1940. I've been unable for some days to buy another volume to continue this diary because of the 3 or 4 stationery shops in the immediate neighborhood, all but one are cordoned off because of unexploded bombs. Regular features of the time, neatly swept up piles of glass, litter of stones and splinters of flint, smell of escaping gas, knots of sightseers waiting at the cordons. Yeah. If you want to know about good essays, read good essays, you know? Orwell, he knows what's up. Emerson, he knows what's up. Annie Dillard, there's some good essays out there. So many kinds of essay. The nonfiction, creative essay. I think magazines that publish nonfiction in general are very conservative, especially long-form stuff. I'm like, come on. I have written the most innovative 15,000-word piece about teaching at a for-profit college. And it's super literary and polished, and it's like basically unpublishable. It can only be a chapter in my book, basically. Like long-form places like New Republic and stuff, they don't want that. They want some like political thing that's bordering on the didactic. You get it? Having a point, you know, a stance. You know, if I ran a journal, yeah, it would definitely have a POV. But I don't know, there's all sorts of different cool kinds of writing. And it's kind of a bummer. Sometimes I write stuff and I'm like, I guess I just hang out with this until the book comes out. But that one's kind of interesting because I'm going to continue to polish it and I may add 5,000 more words. I love the idea of like just adding infinitely to what else can you say about that? But you don't increase the scope. I don't even increase the paragraph count. It's all very long paragraphs, which is very unusual for me. Because the paragraphs match the paragraphs of Rick Bass's short story, The Hermit Story, completely. I use all the same motifs, but only if they organically occur in my nonfiction. For instance, that story mentions dogs all the time, and during the time that I'm writing about was the Doghead Fire, and I could see the smoke of it all the time, just over to the east of town. It's a book I feel I should read. My friend Ty gave this to me. I think it was for like a gift. It's might have been like one of the first books he ever gave me. Good, because he got so many books from me during the purge. Every time I visit his house, it's a little bit painful now. Hello, old friends. Hello, old books, I say. Walk by and caress their spines. Anyway, Ty told me this is good. Sea Room, An Island Life in the Hebrides Islands. Hebrides? Adam Nicholson. This really caught Ty's fancy. He was like, I gotta go do that. And I get it, and I love this cover. Great cover. Adventure story with Hemingway highs, and is also unself-conscious, wonderfully idiosyncratic, and above all, beautifully written. Yeah. Terrifying sea journeys, discovery of Bronze Age gold, 8th century legends, and recalcitrant. Oh, I have to answer a call. Ugh. Well, this is a long video. Okay, that's that anyway. All right. Sea Room. Check it out. And this has been some nonfiction. And this video is about to end just because somebody called me. That's so weird.